Welcome back to our first installment of Johnston County Muzzleloaders Behind the Scenes for 2024. Thank y'all for coming out yesterday. I'm glad we had our meeting. I'm glad we got rained out, in fact. I think it gave us all an opportunity to acquaint ourselves with the firearms a little better and learn a little bit about them along the way. I'm looking forward to a good year with us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got the bag making coming up in May. We've got a couple of opportunities to shoot at a couple of state and national events, in addition to competing alongside the 4-H and also facilitating a couple of really cool things farther off in the year. So one of the things we discussed yesterday was black powder and its substitutes, and this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I've got a couple of examples here that we're going to talk about the differences in the powders. We're going to look at the grain structures, talk about the temperatures of ignition, and then we're going to set some stuff on fire. So we'll get right into it. We're going to start with the real black powder. Now, real black powder has been around quite some time. You know, it was invented in China, and then we sort of adopted it and have been making really good things out of it. Predominantly muzzleloading black powder. Of course, you know, Department of Defense has used it a bunch, and of course it's been used for mining and digging holes in trenches and all kinds of stuff like that. But this is real black powder. This is made by GoX. This is, of course, my proprietary blend, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But I'll talk a little bit about GoX black powder, look at its grains. Then we're going to talk about our substitutes. So I have here one of the gold standards of Pyrodex, of Smokeless black powder substitutes, called Pyrodex. This is, instead of using 3 chemicals, potassium nitrate, charcoal, and sulfur, this one uses a kind of sugar and a different chemical as the oxidizer to give it a little more pump. It was, I think it was released on like the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in like 1976, and I believe the owner of Pyrodex, the Hodgtons, wanted to release it on that as a black powder substitute. It is a propellant versus an explosive, which is what real black powder is, meaning that for this to work, it has to build up pressure inside the chamber, versus this, which just ignites and blasts. So yeah, it's Pyrodex. It's been around a while, and it comes in 2 grades. There's rifle shotgun, and then there's a green bottle, which is the pistol powder. It's a little bit finer grained. This is a mix of Pyrodex, as I don't want to have a whole bunch of stuff, and we just use it for plinking anyway, so there's no real harm in that. And the last substitute I want to get into, smokeless substitute, is 777. This stuff hit the market in 2001, and it's a pretty good powder. Hunters have used it reliably. I used to shoot 777 out of my muzzleloaders until I heard word and saw the light of real black powder. But it's good stuff. This stuff cleans up with water versus having to use maybe a solvent or other kind of cleaning methods with Pyrodex or black powder. This again, I think it's dextrose based. Don't quote me on that, but it also uses a different oxidizer, and it's supposed to be less corrosive than Pyrodex or black powder, but I haven't seen that. And again, I don't abuse my firearms by leaving them dirty for too long. So anyway, we're going to look at 777, we're going to look at Pyrodex, and then we're going to look at real black powder. So yeah, let's get into the grains and like the ignition temperature and stuff like that. So here we have it. We're looking at real black powder over here, our GoX, and we're looking at our Pyrodex here in the middle, and we're looking at 777 over here on this side. As we're looking at it, we immediately notice the difference in colors and textures. This real black powder looks kind of like tiny rocks. I'll try to zoom in just a little more there. So there we go. So if you notice, the real black looks like kind of tiny rocks. They're a little shiny, and yeah, they do what it does what it does. Then we have our Pyrodex here in the middle, which is a little bit lighter gray than our black powder, which is actually black. You might not be able to, you can probably see it in the video. And then we have our 777 over here. This real black powder is my proprietary blend of black powder, and as such, it's not really consistently grained. You'll notice we've got a big chunk here, we've got a little bit smaller chunk here, we've got this long strip of a chunk here, and this tiny little bit here. That's because whenever I get done with like a flask of black powder that's sort of been out and exposed to humidity and the elements and stuff, I don't want to pour it back in my good black powder bottles. So what I do is we make a proprietary blend. I call it a proprietary blend of black powder, and it's a mix of two different grain sizes, 2F and 3F powder, which we'll get into that maybe in a later video. Definitely out at the range we'll talk about it. But anyway, that's black powder. It's got an ignition temperature of just a little more than 400 degrees, I believe, and that's important because this stuff goes off pretty easily. So that's black powder. Let's look at this Pyrodex. Now you might not be able to tell from the video, but it's a little more light and fluffy. Isn't necessarily the right word for it, but yeah, it certainly has a fluffier texture, almost like volcanic pumice, that real light fluffy volcanic stuff that you use to scrub your feet, and they put it in Gojo hand cleaner and stuff like that. It's lighter and fluffier, and one of the selling points is that because it's lighter and fluffier, you get more grains by volume out of it, and your powder stretches longer. That being said, the ignition temperature is higher than the real black powder because the difference in the chemical composition. So I'm not exactly sure what temperature this ignites, but it's got to be at least 600 degrees, 700 degrees versus, and you kind of notice there's still a little bit of irregularity in the grain size here. So there's a dude there, it's a little bigger than this dude here, it's a little bigger than this dude here. Of course, this is your regular brand of Pyrodex. Now they make a Pyrodex Select that is much more uniform and much more consistent grain structure, which at the end of the day means much more consistency shot for shot. And then we got our 777. And like the Pyrodex with a higher ignition temperature than real black powder, the 777 has a higher ignition temperature than Pyrodex. Just again because of the chemical composition that they use. And yeah, stuff like that. Now you will notice about this 777 is that these grains are pretty consistent. The grain size is consistent, but it's also kind of light and fluffy like the Pyrodex. So there's a big grain over here, and then there's this little guy here, but overall it's got a pretty uniform grain structure. Again, it works, it does what it needs to do, it cleans up easily with water. 777, I like 777. Don't get me wrong, we're not going to be shooting 777 in our competitions or out of our rifles. We're going to use the real black powder because for me, it consistently ignites, and it's good stuff. So back to the ignition temperatures, right? Last year when we were on the firing line, matter of fact at the regional competition, there were a couple of youngsters who were having trouble getting their firearms to go, getting their muzzleloaders to go off. And you know, we were using we snapped a couple of caps and they still wouldn't go off. You know, maybe there wasn't any powder in there, so we discharged it with a CO2 discharger, went and reloaded it, watched them put powder in there, and it still wasn't going off. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were using these black powder substitutes, Pyrodex or 777. Because the second we got a pound of real black powder out there for them, as soon as they switched to the real black powder, they started having fewer issues with ignition. And, I think that's just one of those things that, one of the real downfalls of some of these black powder substitutes is that in some of these club guns, it just doesn't go off good. Whether or not it's, you know, just having been shot so many times and the fouling clogs it up a little bit. They were just having trouble to get it to go off. So we were having to use a much hotter percussion cap to get these to go off. So anyway, that's pretty much what I want to talk about as far as the grain structure and size and ignition temperatures and stuff like that is concerned. And because this is all on one sheet of paper, I really don't want to have to fool with, you know, separating them back out. So let's go set it on fire. And on that, I've got 3 little vials of roughly 45 grains a piece. So we're going to set these off individually, and I want to show you the difference in the burn rates between smokeless black powder substitutes and real black powder. I think you'll be surprised. Stand by. All right, so here we are. I've got a little vial of our 777 smokeless black powder substitute. We're just going to pour a little line out here and light it up, and you'll see that it doesn't explode, it burns. So I've got my propane torch right here. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to back up a little bit. We are lit. All right, ready, set, here goes. All right, so that burned, and it doesn't smell like real black powder. So we'll give that a little brush. It's not too hot, so we can go ahead and lay our Pyrodex off. So you heard the rate at which it burned, right? So let's get our Pyrodex poured out there in roughly the same size line, and we're gonna set it on fire. So this is our Pyrodex burning. We're lit. 1, 2, 3. Well, that just well, that just clouded us all up. But you can hear it burning. You know, it's like a shh kind of a burn. And yeah, so there's that's what our Pyrodex sounds like when it's burning. And now I have our real black powder, so I'm gonna set it over here just in case there is an errant spark. And I think y'all are gonna like the effect that this gives. And that's a decent bit of black powder laid out right there. But you're gonna see as soon as this flame touches it, that entire stack of black powder is gonna be gone. So ready, set, here goes. How about that, man? That's and that's why we use real black powder. So anyway, yeah, there's your different burn rate. So anyway, thanks again for coming out yesterday. I hope this video showed you a little bit about why I personally use black powder. Not saying those other powders are bad. I don't use them anymore, mainly because of the consistency of ignition. And you know, I don't know, for me, some of the grades of black powder, you know, you show it a real improvement of accuracy with the black powder versus some of these substitutes. Again, you're gonna see the Pyrodex pop up in our in some of the shooting competitions, and you're gonna see the 777 pop up. You might even see another substitute called Buckhorn 209. We're not gonna touch that stuff because it is $80 for 10 ounces versus like $26 for 16 ounces. Do the math. I think it's highway robbery, but that's just me. What do I know? Anyway, yeah, I hope this was enlightening, and yeah, I hope to see y'all again in the very near future. Take care.